Now it is my pleasure to present to you the 43rd President of the United States, George W. Bush.
At the FBI Academy in Quantico, Virginia, all eyes are on the stage.
Thank you.
But our focus is on one of the hundreds of people putting their hands together for their Commander-in-Chief.
Thanks for having me. I'm so pleased to be back to the FBI Academy and to share with you this special day.
It's the Bureau's graduation ceremony, 2008. Among the rows of dark suits sits Jim Craig. Soon it'll be his turn to cross the stage, receive his badge, and finally become a special agent of the FBI.
Over the past century, the FBI has grown from a small team of 34 investigators to a powerful force of more than 30,000 agents and analysts and support professionals serving around the world.
Jim has already served his country around the world. He used to be a Marine. Now he's about to trade firefights for firewalls.
As you go forth from this academy, you're going to write a new chapter in the FBI's storied history.
Jim has no idea how true that'll be.
I wish you all the best in the future. May God bless you.
And he'll need more than blessings, because his first case will push him and the Bureau straight into the Zeus cybercrime storm.
It just really started to build very, very quickly. The amount of victims in such a short amount of time was unbelievable.
Did you have any idea back then how big this was going to be?
Not at all. Not at all.
For rookie Special Agent Jim Craig, this wasn't just a first case. It was the start of a hunt that would consume nearly a decade of his life, taking him to Eastern Europe and across the table from Russia's Federal Security Service, the FSB.
It was probably not the thing a new agent wants right out of the gate, to be honest with you.
And that gate? Well, it's about to swing open on a case that will stretch from small-town America to the shadow of the Kremlin.
I'm Sarah Rainsford.
And I'm Joe Tidy.
This is Cyberhack, Season 3, Evil Core, from the BBC World Service.
Episode 2, Into the Storm.
Jim Craig wasn't even supposed to be fighting cybercrime. He was first assigned to the Joint Terrorism Task Force in Omaha, Nebraska.
But after a few months, a memo landed on his desk about some dodgy-looking electronic bank transfers. These are called ACH transfers. It stands for Automated Clearinghouse. Think of it as the banking system's postal service. It moves billions every day. If you work and pay bills in the US, chances are most of your money flows through ACH.
And because it's so routine and so boring, the FBI tossed the complaint to the newbie. Eager to get on, Jim starts digging.
But as we were doing so, we started to receive other complaints, very much in the same manner. Fraudulent ACH transactions.
And it's not long before Jim starts to see a pattern. American businesses bleeding cash, drained from their accounts and funneled into others. At first glance, it looks like the money's being paid to company employees, but on closer inspection, these so-called employees are fakes.
The companies being targeted seem kind of random. A dairy in Ohio, a building supply company in Maine, a beer distributor in Iowa. Hundreds of thousands of dollars are vanishing every week.
But who's behind it? Jim has no idea.
We didn't. We had no idea how many people were actually involved, whether it was just a few, was it a large criminal network. We had very little information other than the complaints. That's really only the information we had at that time.
You didn't know where these people were, where this gang were operating out of?
We didn't. We had no idea where they were operating out of.
As the number of victims and the losses pile up, Jim is moved off the terrorism desk and set to work on this cybercrime case full time.
It wasn't that long into investigating this case that we realized just how large it was becoming. It was the largest cyber criminal case in the FBI.
He starts examining the victim company's computers forensically and discovers that the problem seems to start with a phishing scam.
Someone, somewhere, is sending tens of thousands, maybe even millions of emails, hoping for a bite.
Click a bad link and you're hooked. The criminals can start reeling you in.
This technical trickery infects computers with malware, malicious software, that can give hackers control of a device.
So what we knew was we have some sort of malware that was ultimately being utilized, and then fraudulent transactions that were being pushed out to voluminous money mules throughout the United States and then ultimately transferred overseas.
Even Jim would admit that's not much to go on. But he was certain of one thing. The criminals were making a killing.
I'd say a week, we're probably looking at hundreds of thousands of dollars per week.
So pretty profitable for them.
Very profitable for very little effort.
These hackers, wherever they are, have effectively turned American companies into their own cash machine, siphoning off thousands of dollars every day and getting go-betweens to withdraw it and send it out of the country. By mid-2009, the computer security world is putting a name to this particularly profitable malware: Zeus.
They're warning of its power. Among them is Lawrence Baldwin, the cybersecurity specialist we met last time, who cracked a clue in the Zeus code and got a window on the hackers' secret chats. In July, journalist Brian Krebs drops his bombshell in the Washington Post: how these Zeus hackers stole more than $400,000 from Bullitt County in Kentucky.
And as that hits the headlines, FBI Special Agent Jim Craig is already underway with his own investigation, digging deeper into the malicious code.
We started to see a lot of different type of traffic. It was port 5222, port 5223.
Yeah, the old port 5222, 5223, Joe.
Just go with it.
Doing a little more research, we identified the fact that those two ports were synonymous with Jabber traffic.
Jabber traffic we know. That's the server or the central computer that we heard about last time. It's where hackers like Aqua and Tank are chatting away, running their operation.
Jim can't see inside it yet, but he is getting closer. He traces the server's IP address, its digital signature, to an address in the real world, in Brooklyn, New York.
When local FBI agents knock on the door, they find an IT company.
The owner tells the FBI he leases computer servers, a sort of digital HQ for IT networks. Among his customers, the owner says, is a company in Moscow.
Days later, the FBI is back, and this time with a warrant from a judge to copy all the data from the computers. That's then sent over to Jim in Omaha, though he's not sure what to make of this mountain of info, and he hands it over to a computer specialist in the back of the office. Soon, he hears shouting.
Oh my God, you guys got their Jabber server. All their communications are on here.
Jim and his colleagues jump out of their seats.
This is crazy. Kind of, running back there, all kind of hovering around one screen and looking at as he's just kind of scrolling through going, this is all their communications.
Now Jim can see what Lawrence Baldwin is seeing. Names, numbers, dates, times. The difference? While Lawrence is looking on in real-time chat, Jim has a whole archive of the hackers' past conversations. It is a huge dump of evidence. For Jim, it's a jaw-dropping moment, and it won't be his last.
It was gigantic. It was case-breaking. It's a sigh of relief, but then also, of course, excitement and, what are the next steps? Where do we go from here?
From here comes the hard work of sifting through it all and teasing out leads. There's a crazy amount of information, most of it in Russian and Ukrainian, but even with basic translation,
They really made no sense. Well, this doesn't make any sense. We don't know what this means.
The hackers were speaking in some kind of code or slang. Jim calls on FBI translators and even starts learning Russian himself. Over time, the team builds up a hacker dictionary to understand every message quickly. But there's still so much information.
We had to find a way to go through all this data. We had email addresses, we had IP addresses, we had messages.
But it's all just data, and going through it is painstakingly slow.
This is my first case. I'm also a new agent, so I don't have a lot of clout in the office, but I needed to recruit people, senior agents, other individuals, professional support staff even, to assist me with going through spreadsheet after spreadsheet of just data points.
Jim's team grows to about a dozen people, not computer experts per se, just people he can draw into the case.
They're facing the digital equivalent of a million-piece jigsaw puzzle dumped on the table in front of them, with no idea what picture they're trying to piece together. There's frustration.
Like, I don't know what I'm looking for. What's an IP address? You know, why is this email address important?
Jim is trying to organise the information in a way that reveals the bigger picture. Specifically, who exactly are the people in this Jabber chat? But the team's getting nowhere.
They would sit in the conference room and just scroll through Microsoft Excel spreadsheets all day. It doesn't sound sexy because it just isn't.
It's not sexy, and even worse, it's not productive.
And it matters because while Jim's team are hunched over computers in Omaha, all grumpy, the hackers, who they're now pretty sure are somewhere in Russia or Ukraine, are still emptying American bank accounts with glee.
The victims are piling up. Jim needs a breakthrough. He calls a private contractor he knows, another former Marine, who specialises in electronic forensics. Jim's FBI bosses agree to send him to Omaha, and he gets to work with a Splunk.
A Splunk?
Yeah, it's a powerful indexing tool that swallows all the Jabber chat data and starts to make sense of it. Patterns surface, handles connect to IP addresses, IP addresses connect to emails, emails connect to bank accounts.
In other words, this sophisticated software is generating leads.
Literally in the front of you gave you who's who, how much they're discussing, who are they discussing it with, their IP address, emails associated with those individuals. I mean, this was the next big break in the case.
It means Jim and his team can finally start working out who's behind the Zeus crime wave, though they still don't have any names or physical addresses.
But Jim can see something. Only a handful of people seem to be pulling the strings, and two of the most prominent are aliases we already know.
Aqua and Tank.
These are the same two that Brian Krebs exposed in his Washington Post article, accusing them of stealing more than $400,000 from Bullitt County in Kentucky.
And we know how that went down.
They described the entire scheme. The bastards. Now the entire USA knows about Zeus.
Not that it really made a difference.
The attention they got from Bullitt County, it didn't put a hiccup in their operations.
So you didn't see them kind of go quiet, immediately start changing their activity, stop doing the malware attacks?
Not at all.
Do you think that's arrogance?
I'm sure it was.
And as if to underline their arrogance, the pair's talk turns from stealing money to how they're going to spend it.
I know there was discussions about cars. Tank, I believe, at that time he had a BMW, one of the higher priced ones, which kind of gives you an idea of who they are, but also let you know too that unfortunately they're making money.
Jim, remember, isn't reading these conversations live. They're old messages copied from the Brooklyn server. He's still playing catch up. But in those reams of data, they're getting an idea of who does what. Tank seems to be at the centre of the operation in Ukraine.
Then, in a message dated July the 22nd, 2009, about a month after the Bullitt County heist, Tank slips. Pride gets the better of him.
Hey, congratulate me. My daughter was born.
Tank's message in the Jabber chat includes his daughter's name.
And he provided the weight of his daughter.
Small details, yes, but hugely significant. Now Jim can follow up on that hunch about Tank being in Ukraine with something solid: the name, date of birth and weight of a child.
Find the child, find Tank, a key player in this ongoing multi-million-dollar scam.
Find Tank, and maybe you find Aqua too, and the rest of them.
Jim contacts the Ukrainian Security Service, the SBU. Can they check the hospitals, medical records, local birth announcements, anything that might help ID this child and her family.
And ultimately that came back.
Do you suddenly have a proper name for Tank?
And now we have a proper name for Tank, exactly. Now we know exactly who he is. Vyacheslav Penchikov.
How fitting, our fresh-faced agent finds his big break with a baby.
By autumn 2009, the investigation into the Jabba Zeus crew is growing. It's not just Jim and the FBI in Omaha. The Ukrainian authorities now know of suspicious dealings on their turf.
All the while, the American private investigator Lawrence Baldwin is still living his Zeus nightmare months after he first gained access to the gang's Jabba server. He's seeing them chat in real time and is working day and night to warn potential victims across the US. But now he's also seeing them talk about hacks elsewhere, in the United Kingdom.
I had contacts at some of the UK banks, and so I'd ping them and say, hey, you might want to look at this account. And all I had to do was do that like 2 or 3 times, and then it was like, hey, can we talk? I'm like, yeah, sure.
The banks jump on the phone and say,
tell me where you're getting this, because we have been literally pulling our hair out for months with an absolutely major fraud ring, stealing hundreds of thousands of pounds monthly.
It's the Jabba Zeus crew, using the same playbook it used to target victims in the US, stealing bank details and funneling stolen money through mules, who then either cash out or wire it overseas. British police call the crime state-of-the-art.
Lawrence can see from the chat and from nosing around elsewhere online that someone is organising the mules and managing the accounts. But who?
What was so frustrating was we knew we had a mule operator that was coordinating all these mules, and we knew he was operating on the ground in the UK, and all the banks could see the accounts, so we knew that. But it's like we had no insights into like where it was. We didn't have any IP addresses for him or anything like that. We wanted to do a referral to the Metropolitan Police, but we didn't feel like we had enough to go on.
So Lawrence keeps watching to see what else he can learn. Every day he gets a snapshot of this person's online life, and then something odd.
One day, I almost ignored it, but I saw a connection to dominoes.co.uk. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And then, wait a minute, pizza. Like, there's only 2 ways to get pizza that I know. It's like you either go to the shop and pick it up, or you have it delivered. And I'm like, have it delivered? Oh my God, this could be huge.
He holds his breath. How much detail can he see?
Sure enough, he sees a pizza order. Not just any pizza, a Veggie-Roma.
It's the healthy diet for the average Russian cybercriminal.
But the payment details are encrypted. You can't see them.
It did not list the address or anything, so I couldn't even tell if it was a delivery order or a pickup order. But I had the order number, and I was like, this is probably enough. So I forwarded that over to the Met, and I was like, you want to go look at this, and this is why.
Lawrence has done all he can from his side of the Atlantic, so he passes on his cheesy clue.
Now it's over to Britain's biggest police force, London's Metropolitan Police Service, the Met.
In early 2010, Detective Sergeant Simon Williams is running intelligence teams in the Met's counter-terrorism unit when he's asked to work on something new, the Zeus case.
Yeah, I won't say I knew a great deal about cybercrime in that era.
But he's not fazed. He's an experienced investigator.
It was traditional crime taking place, just happened to be stepping into the online world.
Simon is briefed on the UK case so far. Some 600 victims, 1,200 unlawful online banking transactions, and hundreds of money mule accounts.
It was a big problem, definitely, for the UK banking sector. About 4.2 million had been stolen between October 2009 and the early part of 2010.
Over £4 million. That's nearly $5.5 million. Stolen in a matter of months. And that's just from victims in the UK.
Meanwhile, the FBI also shares its intel with the Met, including the Jabber chats they had recovered. This is a huge boost for the British cops. Simon starts looking for clues and sees everything we've already heard about. A lot of chat in both Russian and Ukrainian about endless bank account details and talk of money mules.
Then his team spots something totally unrelated to the crimes. Almost something to ignore.
Almost.
There's someone else in the Jabba Zeus chat. Someone in the UK. And a member of the crew in Ukraine is asking them a favour. Can they buy a Thomas the Tank Engine toy for his young son? He says they sell them at Toys R Us in London.
The guy in the UK says, sure. Later in the chat, the guy says, yep, I've got your toy. Simon knows instantly this seemingly innocuous request, just one friend helping another, could be gold.
One of the wonderful things about the chat logs, of course, is we had date and time, and we knew the time zone as well. So we could be fairly specific.
His detectives get on the phone to Toys R Us.
How many of these toys have you actually sold in London in the last 4 days, and specifically how many on this day?
They narrow it down to 2 locations. Simon sends officers to seize the CCTV footage, but he knows the clock is ticking.
Typically, stores would rotate CCTV every 28 days, so it's really important that you go and seize videos within that time period, otherwise you'll lose the evidence.
They make it on time. They scroll through the footage, and there he is, a man in his late 20s, buying the Thomas the Tank Engine toy.
Then it's a case of, well, actually, let's see what he's used for the payment for that transaction. That ended up with us identifying that he was using the fake and fictitious name of Pavel Klikov.
Klikov. Click off. Get it? But this fake alias leads to a real address, a block of flats in Chingford on the outskirts of London. Time to kick in the door? Not quite.
So although we knew where he was living, we didn't know which property within, I think there was about 9 apartments or flats in that building.
Simon needs to find out which flat the mysterious Klickoff is in without being seen.
So he sets up a covert camera pointed at the front door. It rolls 24/7, recording everything.
We saw all sorts of cars coming and going, and it did take us a few weeks to actually work out which flat he lived in.
Detective Sergeant Simon has an address, but no name, at least not a real one.
Then, pizza's back on the menu.
Simon finds that the same 2 hackers who talked in the chat about the Thomas the Tank Engine toy had also been talking about pizza. And the details? They match what cyber sleuth Lawrence Baldwin had flagged to the Met Police months earlier.
So Lawrence's tip helps corroborate Simon's investigation because, and here's the kicker, the pizza was delivered to the very address Simon's team is watching.
He'd ordered a specific type of pizza from a specific pizzeria. We were able to see by serving a request on said pizza company, we were able to prove that indeed that very night he had ordered that specific type of pizza from that specific pizza restaurant, and we got his payment for that as well, and we're able to, confirm again it was him.
And this time, Simon discovers Pavel Klikhov's real name, Yuri Konovalenko, or as we like to call him, Mr. Pizza.
His main role was the UK-based money mule herder or money mule coordinator. So his role was to work with the money mules in the UK to help them open bank accounts, to help funnel money into those bank accounts, and the money mules would get a cut of the money, and then he would collect the rest.
Which means the Jabba Zeus crew is no local outfit, it's transnational, and Mr. Pizza appears to be the most senior member based in the UK.
We had surveillance teams deployed to follow Konovalenko in the UK. We would see him leave. He didn't drive himself. He would be picked up by a variety of money mules. They would just go from bank to bank to bank,
creating new accounts and withdrawing stolen money.
For now, Simon continues watching Mr. Pizza. He doesn't want to arrest him yet. He wants to catch the whole gang.
The scale of the Jabba Zeus operation is coming into focus. and everything leads east.
A white van regularly stops outside the flat in Chingford. Each time, the driver and Mr. Pizza talk. Simon suspects they're smuggling bundles of cash overseas.
Law enforcement on both sides of the Atlantic see the same thing. An army of money mules draining cash from accounts in the US and the UK. And in Eastern Europe, they discover another web of accounts where the money lands.
The stolen funds are flowing through banks in Poland, Romania, Moldova and Russia before finally ending up in Ukraine.
And that's where we catch up with our rookie FBI special agent, Jim Craig, heading to Ukraine, hoping to get one step further in nailing his first big case, flying into the eye of the Zeus storm.
I was very excited.
And very well informed. It's summer 2010, a year after the first Jabba Zeus victims came to light, and Jim Craig now knows a lot more about the gang. Remember, he now knows Tank's name.
Vyacheslav Penchukov. Now, thanks to the Ukrainian authorities, he's got his address too. Tank lives in Donetsk, in eastern Ukraine, near the Russian border. Today, you might know Donetsk as one of the areas occupied by Russian forces, but back then, it was one of Ukraine's major industrial cities.
Jim's intel suggests Tank's the one in charge. As for his apparent partner, Aqua, he's still a ghost, and likely over the border, in Russia, where it looks like he's the one running the money mules.
Jim's also discovered that the Zeus gang's reach extends further across Europe. As well as those computers in New York, they've also got a server base in the Netherlands. All these different jurisdictions make for a tricky investigation.
But Jim arrives in Ukraine's capital, Kyiv, in the hope of bringing these threads together. His mission, to lay the groundwork for simultaneous raids on the Jabba Zeus crew in Ukraine, the Netherlands and Russia. His first meeting is at the Opera Hotel.
I know that place. It's this fancy boutique hotel right in the city centre, pretty heavy on the marble and the chandeliers.
Jim's guests, agents from the FSB, Russia's security service.
I guess I would coin it as just a friendly law enforcement sit-down with the FSB at the Opera Hotel. We're sitting outside, having a few drinks, and I would say it's very much an opportunity for us to try to build some rapport in hopes that that would turn into more cooperation and more information coming our way regarding Aqua and any other individuals who may be involved in this crime from Russia's side.
This icebreaker between the Americans and the Russians in the heart of Kyiv is from another era. Before Russia's invasion of Ukraine, before the bitter enmity with the West, a meeting like this now is unthinkable.
But back in 2010, it was just 4 or 5 agents from each side, drinking beer and chatting about their lives. The Russians know Jim is planning a big move against the Jabba Zeus crew, and he wants their help.
They seemed very cooperative, they seemed very eager to take part. Of course, you have to kind of consider is the eagerness based on information that they want to try to gather intelligence around our operation and see who we know or how we know.
Keep an eye on you.
I would have to say yes, that was probably the case.
The two sides say their goodbyes, but they'll see each other again the next day. The head of Ukraine's SBU security service has invited them all to his dacha, his country house, out in the woods.
It was amazing. The car ride there was interesting, going through quite an extensive amount of trees and on back roads, and then finally reaching this beautiful, beautiful dacha. Very expansive, looking over a very heavily forested area. It was very impressive.
A bit of context here. The head of the SBU at the time was also said to be one of Ukraine's richest people. And arriving at his country getaway, Jim feels like he's arrived at the private retreat of a head of state.
And this is where the real work of Jim's trip begins.
The SBU, FSB, the Dutch High-Tech Crime Unit, and the FBI came together.
So that's a pretty big deal in the forest.
It was a very big deal.
The job is to work out how to take down the Jabba Zeus crew.
How we'll cooperate, who will cooperate, what will each party's part be in the investigation.
They spend the day chewing over these questions. Jim feels like they're making real progress. They've got targets in their sights now. And at the end of a long day of meetings, Staff usher them into the large dining room.
They wined and dined you.
Yes, they did, that for sure. It was an amazing dinner.
The agents, all in suits and ties, gather around a huge table.
A beautifully set table, the glassware, the plates, the forks, knives, spoons, everything there would be something you would see at a 5-star restaurant. That would be very, very expensive.
The servers bring dish after dish, caviar, exquisite fish courses, fine wines.
And then, of course, came and poured the vodka into these shot glasses.
Someone from the SBU stands up and makes a toast to fallen comrades. Everyone drinks, and the shot glasses are refilled.
Then the next agent does the same thing. He names someone who's died in the line of duty, and everyone drinks. Again, the glasses are refilled. Jim realizes they're going around the whole table. Everyone's doing it.
There are a lot of people at that table, so you can imagine the amount of vodka shots that probably went around that table. It came to a point where I was just filling my shot glass with water because I couldn't have kept up.
I've been there. I know that moment. I've poured plenty of shots of vodka into flower pots in my time.
Yeah. Yes. You had to be discreet because while it was a big table, you were still pretty close. So.
The dinner stretches hours into the night. Jim remembers lots of laughs and handshakes. Finally, with bellies full of 5-star food and all that wine and vodka, Jim and the rest of them push back from the table.
What a day. Jim's proud of what's been achieved.
Absolutely. 100%. The amount of cooperation and I guess the eagerness sitting at that table at the Dacha, I would have very much thought that this was going to be a huge success.
Jim leaves the Dacha convinced this alliance will bring down the Jabba Zeus crew.
A date is set, September the 29th, 2010. There'll be coordinated raids in Ukraine, Russia, and beyond.
And the British police want in too, planning to swoop in on Mr. Pizza and others in London at exactly the same moment. Everything is falling into place.
It all began when a boring case landed on Jim Craig's desk. A year later, the rookie agent has turned it into a global manhunt.
For too long, these hackers have hidden behind screens and fake names and borders. Now a reckoning is coming. Their real names and real addresses are known. Soon there'll be real agents banging on their doors. The end game is near.
Or so it seems. Because months earlier in Donetsk, Vyacheslav Penchikov, aka Tank, had already received a warning.
They know your real names, they know your handles, they know you are in Donetsk, and so be careful.
Next time on Cyberhack, Evil Core. This has been episode 2 of 6 of season 3 of Cyberhack Evil Core from the BBC World Service.
Cyberhack Evil Core is a BBC long-form audio production for the BBC World Service. It's presented by me, Joe Tidy.
And me, Sarah Rainsford. We'd like as many people as possible to hear our stories, so please leave a rating and a review and do tell others about Cyberhack. It really does help.
If you haven't already, don't forget to check out the previous seasons of Cyberhack, the story of the Lazarus heist. To ensure you never miss an episode, follow or subscribe to Cyberhack on BBC Sounds, or if you're outside the UK, on bbc.com. Thanks for listening.